Hello and welcome to Kayla's World, Preptober edition. My name is Kayla Canoe. I'm an author, YouTuber, gamer, and aerialist. And today's video is the second video in my Preptober series, which is basically catered towards helping you outline and prepare for NaNoWriMo because it is coming. And today we are going to be focusing on world building, and just like I did for character building, I have printables that I created, and look how cute they are with little Halloween themes on there. But this is a 2-pager for world building, and the printables are available on Patreon for my patrons. The basic level will get you access to these printables. I also have some special Preptober / how to prepare for novel writing videos that will be for patrons only. But without any further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get right into it, and I'm going to go through what's on here and what you need to know or what you should consider writing down for your world building before you actually start writing your story. So, first thing we have on the list is the name of your world or planet or continent or whatever you want to call it. Write that down. Have that available. What do the people of the world call it? It needs a name. Maybe it's Earth. Maybe it's not Earth. Maybe it's Middle Earth, right? Name of your world. Write it down. Second thing we have listed here is going to be the world type. And I wrote this down because the world type can be very different. Is it a flat world? Is your world on the back of a moving tortoise? Is it a round world similar to Earth? Maybe you have multiple planets, so maybe your world's actually a universe and the planets in the universe are more like your continents on the planet. Write that down, what type of world it is. You want to know? I also have a section, a little stamp here called time period. So if you're basing, like what is the time period of your world? And of course this is kind of referencing like real world, but it's like, is it medieval times? Is it modern times? Is it futuristic times? Because knowing like the time period of your world means you're more likely to know what people are wearing and what kind of technology is going on and all of that stuff. And what the economy looks like. So write down the time period so that you know what you're referencing when it comes to world-based stuff. The other thing is the terrain. Is there a special terrain or just what is the general terrain? For that, it could just be Earth-like, where there's land, swamps and deserts and mountain ranges and forested areas and flat farmlands or hills or valleys or the normal topography that you would find on Earth. Maybe you have different types of topography. Write that down because you're going to want to have that for reference. I know when I was doing my sci-fi space novel, I had to do a lot of research on solar systems and stars and galaxies and black holes and all that stuff. So write down the type of terrain that you will be having in your world. And then we get into questions here. And we have how the world is governed / organized. Is it unified? Are all the continents of your world under one ruler? Are there rulers? Is it a democracy? Is it organized at all? Maybe you have a chaotic world and there is no organization. There's just a bunch of little tribes all over the place because they're too far apart to even know about the other tribes and they haven't explored much of the world. How much of the world's explored? Is it organized? You need to know that. Know your general governing systems. If you have multiple governing systems, maybe you have multiple kings and queens of different areas and what their interactions are with each other and how the world is ruled is probably one of the first things, easiest things for you to get started with. Next, we have religious beliefs throughout the world. Is it one religion? Does everybody in the world recognize one religion or not recognize it? Are there multiple religions? Are there multiple gods? What is the theology behind all of that? Write that down. Just knowing if if people are all on one page for religion or if there's a variety of religions is good to know, because you could have a world where everyone believes in the one and only true God or goddess, and then you can have other worlds where people believe whatever they want to believe. Maybe nobody believes in God. Who knows? Write that down. You could get into more detail with this if you want to and make your own religions. I know I did, and I enjoyed that. But this is more of a kind of overall knowledge base versus super specific. Next, we have cultures of the world, which is very similar to religious beliefs. Is there a variety of cultures? If your world's big and there's lots of people in different areas and there's different terrains, they probably have different cultures. If there's a bunch of different beliefs, there's probably different cultures tied to those beliefs and those religions. Or maybe your world is really, really small and there's only one culture type. Probably less likely, but that could be a thing. Maybe that's important. Write that stuff down. Know how your cultures interact, especially if we're talking fantasy worlds. These cultures could be based off magical races. If you have magical races, which, by the way, I did a video on how to, a guide for creating your own unique races, and I will link that below for you guys. But if you have unique races, you're going to want to know how their cultures vary and how their cultures interact with each other. You'll want to put that down, because maybe one type hates the other type, and that causes social issues. Just saying. Next, I have physics of the world / magic systems. So basically, is there magic in your world or not? And is the physics of your world like the physics of Earth? Are there any kind of special things about your world? Maybe it's lower gravity, so people can jump really, really high. Write that kind of stuff down. So that's the physics of the world or the magic systems. If you need a little help on magic systems, I have a really old video about how to write about magic. I will link that below as well. But I am going to be doing a more detailed and specific video on how to create magic systems or building your magic systems in your world. And that's going to be a patron-only video, so you can check that out over on my Patreon. But yeah, continuing on, we have how your world came to be, which is basically code for what is your world's origin story. Was it the Big Bang? Boom, stuff collided and now your world was created. Maybe God created your world and it was just made like that. Know how your world was created, why it exists, how it exists even. And it doesn't have to be super detailed, but that's kind of like a history of your world sort of thing, which you could put in there too. So like if you have a dystopian society, you might need to know how that dystopian society was created. Was there a big war? Was there a big famine? Was there an apocalypse? Those big keynote things you're going to want to jot down and know what they are, because people are going to reference that in your story. Most likely. Next, we have more questions, because second page is also cute with lots of questions. Where in your world is the story taking place? Because that's important. And why? What is your reason for the story taking place in that area of your world? Write it down. Next, what is a typical day in your world? So this basically means, what is a normal day physically in your world? Is there a certain period of time where there's sunlight and a certain period of time where there's darkness? Maybe there's more darkness than there is light. Maybe there's more hours in your day than there are in the normal day. How many days in a week are there? Do you want that to be different than like the standard here on Earth, like timing? Because you could. Maybe they only have 6 hours of light and they only have 12-hour days. Who knows? Or maybe they have like an 8-day week. Can the people of your world even tell time? Things to write down, things to consider. Next, we have what are the holidays of your world / seasons of your world. So do the seasons change in your world like they do on Earth? Do they experience a summer, winter, spring, fall kind of thing? Maybe it's completely different than that. Maybe they're just like winter, summer, and there's no in between. And holidays, do they have special holidays for their religious beliefs? Do they have traditional holidays more similar to like what we have here on Earth? In America, which is where I am. I am in America. So like do they celebrate those kinds of holidays? Do they just celebrate like harvest seasons? Things like that. Those are good things to know because maybe you're going to be in the middle of a celebration in your story and you want to have detail about that. The next question is, how do people survive in your world? So this is basically just, how do they get their physical generic needs met? How do they live or have shelter? How do they get water? How do they get food? How do they get clothing? Depending on your time period, could be very different. You might have indoor plumbing and they get their water from the city. Or they might have to go out to a well and carry up their own water. Maybe they have to live by water, like by a river, because that's the only way that they can get water is from the land. Write those kinds of things down. Those are going to be important because the people need to know how to survive in your world. Next, we have describe the buildings / infrastructure of your world, which is very along the same lines of how people survive. Are there roads? Are they dirt? Are they gravel? Can people fly ships in the air? Maybe they don't need roads because all of their transports can fly. Are they using horse and carriages? Are they using automobiles? Do they have trains? What do their buildings look like? Are they all brick? Are they all stone? Are they concrete? Are they glass? What is the architecture of your world? Is it different in the different areas? You may just want to have like a generic, this city is based off of this type of environment. So like I know for me, I'm like, this city here, it's basically a steampunk type city, and this city here is a trade port city. They get a lot of things shipping and sending coming through there. That's how they make their money. And you might want to think about money in your world as well and how that all works and ties in together. The next question I have on here is, what do your people value most in your world and how do they get it? So that goes along the lines of kind of the money. Is money the value? Is trade the value? Maybe it's like happiness or interactions with other people. But how do they get it? How do they make money? How do they, basically it ties into how do they survive? What's important? How do they get it? What happens if they don't get it? Are there repercussions? Write that stuff down. And then the last, but definitely not the least, which I did kind of hit on a little bit earlier, but what are the societal issues of your world? Is it a dystopian society? Why? Why is it dystopian? What makes it dystopian? Are there racial issues? Are there, gender issues, equality issues? People don't have enough food, so famine's an issue. Like, people eating each other, cannibalism issues, whatever they are, write them down. If you have something specific that you want to address, you're like, this is an issue in my society and I want this to be clear, write it down. The more you know, or the more of like a base idea you have of your world, the better for writing, because then you'll kind of know how people are interacting with each other and how they are behaving with each other. Because if your character is gonna go to a different town, they might have a different culture, and that interaction will be based off of how the world is in the different areas. So write it all down. That is what I have for you guys. I hope that will help you kind of get started on your world building. There's obviously a lot more detail you can go into. Actually, there is one more thing on here that I would like to note that I wrote here that I didn't actually go over, is this little square here. And it says, draw a basic map of your world and include the following: the shape of the world, whether that is like continental shapes, if there's multiple continents and where they are in relation to each other. If your world is a universe, draw your little planets, your little solar systems, where they are in relation to each other, because it's it's not necessarily directional in space. But where the planets, if the planets are in relation to each other, draw that down. And it doesn't have to be pretty. It can be ugly. You can just draw circles, squiggle shapes, but you want to know where things are in relation to each other, especially if you have travel going on in your world. You'll also want to note take your major cities. I suggest coming up with names ahead of time, which I also mentioned in my character building video. Generate city names, generate town names. If you have roads and stuff, you might want to generate road names, because when you have little lists of names, it makes it a lot easier when you're in the middle of writing and being like, they traveled north down X street, but you actually have a name for X street because you generated a list of names. Have a list of names. If you have a map, especially since you already know where your story should be taking place in your world, you'll want the name of that area. You'll want that on your map, and if it's in relation to other main cities, like, draw them. Put little dots, little names. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something very basic, because having that will keep things a little bit more organized in your mind, and when you go back, you'll be like, oh, in chapter 1, I said that this city was north of this city, and in chapter 10, I said it was south. Gotta have to fix that. So it's good to have that map. Also, if there's any special locations, so you might, like I said, if there's like a mountain range or a volcano or a giant statue of the goddess reaching towards the sky and it's like the tallest point in the world, you might want to mark where that is on your map, because that is probably any important features of your world. You're going to want to note take where they are in relation to the other important places in your world on your little generic map. And of course, you can get more detailed with that. And actually, I did a video on how to make a map, so I'm going to link that below for you guys too, if you want to check that out as far as some more world building tips. But yeah, that is what I have for you guys today. And if you need more help in your Preptober, you can drop questions in the comments. You can also drop questions over on the NaNoWriMo Discord. And if you guys don't know, we are hosting a ton of different events for Preptober and NaNoWriMo season. So if you want fellow authors and community and support, join us. The link is below. We are happy to have all of you guys working together as we struggle through these next couple of months. But yeah, so that's it for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed your time here in Kayla's world.